At 7:27 p.m. on February 9, 2004, a woman named Faith Westman called the police in Haverhill, New Hampshire, to report a car accident on Route 112. A black Saturn appeared to be stuck in a ditch near her home. The dispatcher thanked her for calling and sent out an officer. By 7:42 p.m., authorities had received another phone call about the accident, this time from a bus driver named Butch Atwood. He reported that the driver was a young woman who appeared to be shaken up, but unharmed. Atwood said that he had offered to call the cops at the scene of the crash, but the woman claimed that she had already called roadside assistance. Still, Atwood called the police anyway once he arrived home, about 100 yards away from the accident. He said that he could not see the woman's car from his house, but he did see other cars passing by on the road. At 7:46 p.m., the first responding officer had arrived on the scene. But the mysterious young woman was nowhere to be found. After an initial search of the area, authorities learned that the missing woman was a 21-year-old named Maura Murray, a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. She had left campus earlier that day without telling anyone that she was going to New Hampshire. And after Murray vanished in Haverhill that evening, she was never seen again. Maura Murray, born on May 4, 1982 in Brockton, Massachusetts, grew up in Hanson, a nearby hamlet. At the age of 6, she, the youngest child of Fred and Lori Murray, witnessed her parents' divorce. Murray excelled academically as a track athlete and honor student. Despite receiving an acceptance to West Point, she chose to pursue her nursing studies at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. Although there were occasional issues, her experience there seemed to be mostly typical. 3 months before her disappearance, Maura Murray was arrested for using a stolen credit card number, but that charge was supposed to be dismissed as long as she maintained good behavior for 3 months. And on February 5, 2004, Murray had an emotional phone conversation with her sister Kathleen, who was struggling with addiction and issues with her fiancé. At the time, Murray was at her campus security job and was so distraught by the call that she had to be escorted back to her dorm. When her supervisor tried to find out what was wrong, all Murray could say was this: "My sister." This was just 4 days before Murray vanished. Murray's father, Fred, traveled to Amherst on February 7, 2004. He said that he went car shopping with his daughter and went to dinner with her before he went back to his motel. He then lent Murray his car so she could drive back to her dorm for a party that night. But on her way back in the wee hours of the next morning, she crashed her father's car into a guardrail. Though Murray was unharmed, the car was seriously damaged. Aside from being upset over the accident, Murray reportedly seemed fine when her father took her back to her dorm later that day. But the next morning, on February 9, 2004, everything changed. Murray emailed her professors to say that she would be taking a week off due to a death in the family. Her relatives later said there was no death. She also emailed her boyfriend, Bill Rausch, a U.S. Army lieutenant in Oklahoma. "I love you more, stud. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking to much of anyone. I promised to call today, though. Love you, Maura." Murray called the owner of a condo in Bartlett, New Hampshire, where she had stayed before with family, but she didn't reserve a room. She also called a booking hotline for hotels in Stowe, Vermont, but again did not reserve a room. By that point, she had also used the internet to look up directions to Burlington, Vermont. It's unclear what her planned destination was meant to be, because she didn't tell anyone where she was going. Around 3:15 p.m., Murray drove to an off-campus ATM and withdrew $280. She then went to a liquor store and purchased about $40 worth of alcohol, including Bailey's, Kahlua, and boxed wine. At 4:37 p.m., she placed a call to her own voicemail. It was the last recorded instance that she ever used her phone. Little is known about Murray's whereabouts between her errands in Amherst and her car crash in Haverhill hours later, which likely happened at some point between 7 p.m. and 7:25 p.m. The 911 calls from Westman and Atwood, the two locals who reported the car accident, were placed at 7:27 p.m. and 7:42 p.m., respectively, and by 7:46 p.m., Murray had disappeared. The first officer on the scene found a damaged car, but no driver. The vehicle was locked, and the airbags had been deployed. The cop who wrote up the report said, Evidence at the scene indicated the vehicle had been eastbound and had gone off the roadway, struck some trees, spun around and come to rest facing the wrong way in the eastbound lane. There were no obvious signs of foul play, and there were no footprints in the snow that led into the nearby woods. So the officer first asked Atwood, the last known person to speak with Murray, to give him a hand with the search. Eventually, a state trooper showed up, followed by firefighters and an emergency medical service. While they began combing the area west of the scene, it's believed that no one went east during the initial search. This was one of many things that Murray's father, Fred, who was only informed about his missing daughter 24 hours after the crash, would criticize about how the police handled the search. "I knew she was headed east," Fred said. "She was headed to Bartlett. She was up there as an infant. I remember changing her diapers in a tent up there, for Christ's sakes." Police also believe that Murray may have been trying to kill herself and even put out a press release 2 days after she first went missing that she was possibly suicidal. Her father has denied this suggestion. She was in good spirits and had no worries or reason to run away from her life. However, it could not be ignored that Murray had been dealing with numerous problems prior to her disappearance, including her legal issues with credit card fraud, her worries over her alcoholic sister, and crashing her father's car mere hours before getting into yet another car accident. Though many of her loved ones believed that Murray had simply intended to get away from all the drama for just a few days, there were some signs that she intended her disappearance to be a permanent one. Most notably, a search of her dorm room revealed that she had packed up most of her belongings into boxes before she left. Atop one of the boxes was a printed email to her boyfriend, which detailed problems in their relationship. While Murray had left some of her belongings in her car, a few key items were missing, including her cell phone and backpack. However, her phone was never used again. Any bank account associated with her has remained dormant. And ever since Maura Murray's disappearance in 2004, one of the earliest police theories about this befuddling missing person case was that Maura Murray had either planned to kill herself or had been consumed by suicidal thoughts after her final car accident, but many of her loved ones have firmly insisted that she would never have ended her own life. Personal feelings aside, some of the items that Murray had packed in her car, such as birth control pills, tooth whitener, and college textbooks, have led many to believe that she was not intending to die that day. After all, why would a suicidal person bother packing items like those? Another theory was that Murray had simply panicked after crashing her car just hours after damaging her father's vehicle and had escaped the area to avoid getting into trouble. Considering the amount of alcohol found at the scene and the Coke bottle that was likely filled with alcohol, authorities believed that Murray had been drinking and didn't want to risk juke. The nearby woods might have hypothetically been a good place to hide out if the weather had been warm, but it was rather cold outside, and there were no footprints found in the snow leading to the woods, meaning that she would have had to escape on the road, likely moving east of the accident scene, since that area was not inspected during the first search. Interestingly enough, a contractor who had been passing by on Route 112 that night later reported seeing a young person moving eastbound on foot a few miles away from the scene of the accident around 8 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. However, the contractor didn't report the alleged sighting until months later because he was unsure at first about the exact date he had seen the person. It's still unclear whether that person was actually Murray. Assuming that Murray did not kill herself and did not succumb to the elements while in hiding, where would she have gone? Some have speculated that she started a new life for herself, perhaps even in Canada, to escape her legal issues and the drama that was unfolding in her personal life. While authorities have acknowledged the possibility that Murray is still out there somewhere, they think it's extremely unlikely. Though some have stuck to the suicide or accidental death theories, others think that she was abducted. Her father, Fred, firmly believes that she was taken by a local dirtbag. However, many residents of Haverhill have scoffed at the idea that it was a local person who did it and suggest that Murray was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time and that a random kidnapper just happened to be on that road on that day. In the years since Maura Murray went missing, amateur sleuths have explored all of these ideas and more. For instance, Murray's boyfriend Rausch has been accused of sexual misconduct against other women. Other theories have focused on Atwood, the last known person to see Murray alive. Some found it suspicious that he did not stay with Murray until help arrived. Also, he and his wife moved to Florida shortly after the disappearance. But for all the theories, we're no closer to finding out what happened to Maura Murray today. than we were nearly 2 decades ago. Considering her slim chances of survival, there have been multiple efforts to recover her remains near the scene of the accident, but these have all led to dead ends. Now we come to end of the story, so don't forget subscribe button and click on bell icon for further crime stories notification.